Welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner Podcast. My name is Coach Scott. I'll be your host today. Guys, I got a great show for you guys today. I got a great guest. It's one we've been talking about for quite some time. Derek Murphy over at marathoninvestigation.com. We're going to bring him on in just a moment. We're going to do a little housekeeping first. As always, you can find this and the back episodes of our podcast at our website, ordinarymarathoner.com. Check that out if you get a chance. You can also find us at most of the aggregators, places like Stitcher and TuneIn, iTunes, Google Podcasts, all that good stuff. If you like the show, hit that subscribe button. Never miss a new episode that way. You can also find us over at YouTube, at least the audio of all our podcasts, and sometimes throw a little video in there over at our YouTube channel, Ordinary Marathoner. Hit the subscribe button over there too. We could always use the help over at the YouTube channel, building that up as best we can. So it really helps us out if you can hit that subscribe button there. What else we got going on? Team Ordinary is doing awesome, guys. You guys are out there. I don't know. You're just staying busy, doing a lot of races. Love to see all your races hitting up on the race schedule. If you're not a member of Team Ordinary already, go to teamordinary.com. Check out the website. Join us. We're not an intimidating group. Just join us. Just join us. We're not an intimidating group. But if you sign up on the website, you get your shirt, your hat, all that good stuff. You get to add all of your races to our race schedule and your profile to the athlete profile section, where I try to read every week. I try to read at least one profile. Those podcasts have been getting really good reviews. I love to get the feedback from you guys. Love to hear it, and we'll keep doing that as long as I have supply of good stories. And you guys definitely have filled me with a good supply for now. But join the team. Get your races on the race schedule. Get your profile up on the webpage and possibly have your profile read on our podcast here. What else we got? Our Ordinary Marathon, our charity race, our virtual charity race. It's going to be in May 8th through May 17th. And you're going to want to register as early as possible, ordinarymarathon.com. Get registered as soon as possible. We've already done a bunch of giveaways. We've got a lot more to do, so don't wait to the last minute to register for the race, especially if you're going to do it anyway. If you're a listener of the podcast and you use coupon code ORDINARY, you'll get $5 off, so the race will be $25 instead of $30. We're going to be doing a bunch of things. Just keep an eye open, because we have, I think we're going to be doing a vote on our medals. We're going to decide which medal design we're going to use for this year's race, and we actually might use that down the line as well. Who knows? But just keep an eye out for that. We're going to be doing a vote on that. It might be a 24-hour job. I don't know, but meaning you'll have 24 hours to vote for it. We're also going to be doing a vote for our T-shirt design. You guys rip my T-shirt design every year, so now you're going to have a choice. You're going to have a choice. I got some design people working on that as well, and that'll be coming out in just a minute. So without further ado, let me bring in today's guest. We've been talking about him for quite some time on the discussion group. I've mentioned him a whole lot of times on the podcast. So let's bring him right in. Derek Murphy. Derek, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Derek, so I have this group of people on my Facebook discussion group. I talk about you all the time on the podcast because I do like your work. But I got to say, my Facebook group, it's a bunch of classy people. There are a lot of classy people. It's not like I find like some places are a little bit less refined. But my audience is typically very. I'm just going to say I'm going to use the word classy. And yet when I brought your name up, I got like 2 or 3 detractors. And it was kind of strange for me. It was kind of weird because my audience typically, like, there's not a lot of arguing or talk about that, like in that sort of fashion, typically on my discussion page. So I'm wondering, what did you do, man?
It's really odd. And actually, I will say, when I first kind of went mainstream, I guess is the word, mainstream public, with this site, I think the percentage of detractors was actually less than what I thought, but they can be very loud and they can be very, adamant and vocal. And, because initially, I kind of started on the Let's Run. I'm, sad to say, is kind of where where this idea kind of spurred from. And so I put up a blog and I was anonymous, and, I made efforts to make sure, I don't want, I just kind of wanted to, so it was very few people were looking at it. It was really kind of probably an extension of the Let's Run board. It would be those people. No one else would really know about it. It got shared to Reddit a little bit, but then once I was getting in some deep dives into like Boston Marathon results. The whole idea was to see, these people are cheating. To what goal? Okay, hey, let's see if people are actually cheating to get into Boston. And so somebody who was in one of the groups mentioned that to a writer at Runner's World. They contacted me, and so at that point, I'm like, all right, they're going to do a story on me. I need to.
You got to come clean.
I need to be public with it. I need to. If I'm going to put these people out there in a bigger setting, then maybe my 50 or so people who are looking at the blog, I need to own it. So really, and there were some of the same detractors back in the first day. So they can be very loud, and I get it to a point, but it's but in like my real life, I've never really come across anybody who's really been dead set against it, or they're just not telling me.
Maybe face to face is always a little more difficult.
But it's always like, hey, who would not like what you do? Who would not be for that?
I mean, so it's kind of and I've talked to a lot of people over the last couple of weeks, ever since we sort of scheduled the podcast. And maybe what we should do is kind of like take a step back, because I don't want to because some people are going to be listening to this podcast and be like, who's Derek Murphy? I don't really know. Who's Marathon Investigator guy? That's actually what I call you on the podcast sometimes. Is I just that Marathon Investigator guy, but it's marathoninvestigation.com. And you mentioned it already, kind of is what you do is you catch people cheating. You catch people cheating in all kinds of different fashions, in all different ways, while typically running marathons, but also triathlons, other races. So why don't we just, before we even get into the deep dive, and you kind of started a little bit with it. I mean, you said you were anonymous when you started. You started a blog. Was it just sort of like, were you doing it for fun? Were you doing it for kicks? Or were you actually doing it, how did it kind of like, how did the idea actually come up? And then how did it develop into what it is? And you kind of, I guess, answered that a little bit already, but maybe do a little more detail.
Sure. The idea how it came up, and it's actually documented, all this is kind of documented on the Let's Run message boards, where it was during the whole Mike Rossi story. Some of your listeners, if you're not familiar with Mike Rossi, he was the guy who he ran the Boston Marathon, and he took his kids out of school to go to Boston with them, understandably. And you mentioned that you have kids, and if your kids miss school, it's to go on a trip or anything, it's considered unexcused absence. So you get a form letter, from the school saying, it's important their kids are in school. This is unexcused absence. Well, this rubbed Mike the wrong way, and he wrote a letter. I don't think he actually sent it to the school, but he posted on Facebook, and it went viral. He said, my kids learn more in Boston, than they would in school. We learned about history, we learned about culinary arts, whatever. So basically, defending taking his kids out of school to watch him run the Boston Marathon.
Clam chowder, probably, right?
And he was being touted as the dad of the year.
I remember. I do remember that. Yeah. So he was being touted but as it turns out, most people think, and the evidence points to the fact that he cheated in his qualifying race. So he wasn't in Boston legitimately. And so this whole thing just completely backfired on him in a big way on the Let's Run message boards. And it was going, threads were going hundreds and thousands of pages, people, ripping on him and doing an investigation to say, hey, this guy, he ran like a 3, I should know the time by heart now. It was like a 3:15. I think his best before that was maybe, it was sub 4, maybe 3:40, 3:45, but it was a big personal record for him. And it turns out he was the only runner on the course without any photos. There were no intermediate timing mats, so there wasn't timing data that was damning. But it was pretty obvious to anybody that he was not capable of that time and that he cheated. So then it kind of got off the rails where it got towards, people. He's like a wedding DJ. Well, all these other wedding DJs apparently had beefs with him, and it started getting very personal and getting started attacking him, and he attacked back, or his friends attacked back. You don't know because Let's Run is anonymous, so you can't prove any of this is people responding were Mike directly. But it just got ugly. So I'm like, why are we spending? So my thought was, and I think I posted, why are we spending so much time on Mike Rossi? Okay, here's one guy who cheated to get in the Boston Marathon. Are there no other cheaters to worry about? Why are we on the hundreds of pages of this? And people are still going,
posting about him to this day, and I still get grief.
So were you the one that outed him, or were you?
No, not at all. I was just kind of following along.
Right.
So, so as and I was posting a little bit, but I kind of got in on the end of it, so I didn't do any of the
legwork,
looking through photos. Right. No, not at all. But I was definitely following it. I had stumbled on Let's Run because I was just kind of checking up on a different cheater from, that was interesting, Kip Litton. And there's an article written about him in the New Yorker on how he cheated at mini races to run sub 3. So I was kind of following up on that and saw this Mike Rossi deal and got sucked in. But back to my thought was, okay, why so much time on this one guy? Yeah, we determined he cheated. Is there anybody else? So I just looked. I've told the story 100 times. I just, looked through. Okay, let me go on Marathon Guide, see what races were held in the past month or so, and let me just start checking, see if I could find somebody that cheated. It's probably the first race I looked at. It was the Fort Lauderdale A1A Marathon.
I ran that one.
Nice.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and it was you.
It was
me. And I found, and like the results on that were very, you didn't need to be technically savvy. It was all just laid out for you in a tabular format, like a spreadsheet right on the screen in front of me. And so you could see anybody who's missing a split, you can just visually look and see that. So I found one right away where, I don't know the exact times, but the first half of the first split was in maybe a 10-minute pace, and then all of a sudden missed a couple splits, and she finished with the Boston qualifying time. So I plugged her name into social media, and hey, I qualified for Boston. There's pictures, and so it was obvious she cheated like within 5 minutes, and she was in the results. Like, okay, well, why am I catching this? This should have been caught by
a race
anybody.
Director,
So I had posted about that on Let's Run, and with her name and everything. So, and they took down the post. Which now I can understand.
Yeah.
You don't want to have your users just putting out names.
Right,
I don't allow people to do that on my site. But the thing was, they were very inconsistent. The Mike Rossi thread, people are talking about, how he's a bad DJ or how, DJs are, but they're letting that go. But hey, this woman obviously cheated and that didn't go. So I'm like, well, let me start. We don't know. We never got a good policy from them. So, hey, somebody, I don't think it was even me, said, hey, somebody needs to start a blog. Just to kind of keep this stuff. So I ended
put
up
everything together. Yeah. So that's
I had a blogger. It was like marathoncheat.blogspot.com was the initial blog. Wow. And basically I just I put the information there, and what I would do initially, like with this runner was, just kind of more just informational way. Here's all the information. I would, shoot the race director a message, say, hey, or the timer, and say, hey, I found this person. Here's a link. Here's all the details. Yeah. And some people would look at it, and people mostly from Let's Run say, hey, hey, what about this guy, or check this guy, stuff that they found or were aware of. So then I would kind of do some of the same, just calculating split times and all that. And so that's what it was initially.
Yeah, and I must have come across some of those. And when I ran the A1A full, and one of the years that I ran it, which I don't know how much detail but it was the year that we ran a quarter mile of the race, and then a freight train went through, and then they had to revert us back to the front. And I don't know if that would have ever affected any of the races, but I believe that year that someone ran the half marathon, because there's a half marathon option, and came in second place female or third place female. And I don't know if it was you that nabbed her, but they nabbed her right away.
That was probably that was the most, well, up until this year at least, that was the most viral thing that.
Okay, so
that one, and I didn't, again, someone sent me. I didn't typically at that point. That's probably the first half marathon I ever wrote about.
Yeah,
I was just so laser focused on
BQ,
Boston qualifiers and full marathon. And so, but as I was half, I'm like, hey, she took second place. So this picture, and I did a lot. So somebody tipped me off to that. Again, so I looked at her Strava, and I was the one that found. I saw her finished photos with her watch face. I bought the high res photo. I think that was the first photo I'd purchased of hundreds I bought since. And it showed her distance and her time on her watch, which was like 11.6 miles to the 13.1.
Right. And then I think she went and got her bicycle and rode like after the fact.
She tried to fake it. It was there were so many levels that made that thing go viral. And it's funny, I did not mention her name in my initial article. I just, it was easy to discern, but kind of my thinking has always been, hey, if I don't, not putting her name out there, so it's not going to be someone Googles her name, this isn't going to come up kind of thing.
Yeah.
There might be a screenshot, but that was kind of my thinking, like, hey, yeah, it's out there, but no one's going to stumble across this accidentally.
Right.
But what happened was it got picked up by first her local news station, picked it up, and then, it got picked up by the New York Post. And then it just, then it went everywhere. I mean, literally, nationwide, it was like the lead story, Yahoo Sports, and, that completely went viral, and it more went viral. And of course, they named her, and it went viral because I think she went to Harvard. She was a Huffington Post blogger, so they latched onto that, and she was an attractive young female. I think that was part of it too.
So it's like it makes me wonder.
And I didn't write about any of that stuff. I didn't write about her Huffington Post, or I did write that she was working. Her trip there was paid by. She was like a blogger and influencer, so she was paid by the tourism board to go there and write about this race. And so that was kind of part of my thing. But it went completely viral. Again, I didn't contact, and I never do. I didn't contact any of these outlets. Say, hey, look at this story. It just kind of went that way.
So this thing kind of morphed, and actually, this conversation, it can go in 100 different directions from here. It's funny. So I tried to make it a little outline for myself, and we've totally destroyed it already. So
I know we're like out of order. We jumped ahead about a number of months from when it went to from the site. So
So I mean, one question for you would be, obviously this person she podiumed. She was a social media influencer. You already talked about people who BQ or try to cheat the system. And I got to tell you, with the BQ people, I am 100% on board. We have a lot of people in our group who have worked very hard, and we watch them, wake up at 5 a.m. doing 10, 15-mile training runs and working their butts off, just trying to get that BQ time. And last year we had a couple women who achieved the initial time to put their name in, but then didn't make that secondary cutoff, so that they missed out. And meanwhile, there are people out here like the guy you mentioned who's using mules or whatever they're doing or cheating, cutting the course or whatever they're doing to get BQ time. So I guess my question for you is your focus only on the BQ people or the social media people or the people who podium? I do know that, occasionally you're gonna catch other people, but is that remained a focus for you? Is that, I mean, if this woman wouldn't have podiumed, if she would have came in 5th, would you have written an article?
Probably. Maybe there's a lot more there. The fact that she was paid to do the race and promoting. So that's kind of I don't know. Maybe if she didn't podium, I never would have known about it. It would have been reported to me. Because again, there was so much there where she I guess confronted the person, second place winner, said, hey, here's how I beat you. Here's how I did it. And she lied to me in the conversation, saying she didn't, she just went straight to the hotel and she was tired. But there was a lot there. But usually as far as focusing individually on somebody, there needs to be, if I'm going to name somebody in an article, it really, needs to be, okay, they're taking something, they're gaining something tangible from the effort. Or they're just,
right. So,
outright stealing, like the woman who literally managed to steal somebody's actual bib in Disney and got arrested on the course, right. So.
Yeah.
Back the Packers. So there needs to be something egregious. I'm not going to call out by name the person who cheats to get a 6.5 hour time. Again, unless they're claiming they run the most marathons in a year,
right,
or there's something else. But the average person who cheats, I'll write about that generally. I'll write the numbers on Disney races or Mexico City. Hey, 1,500 people got disqualified from this race, but I'm not going to hit those people individually, right?
So basically, there's got to be a reason. There's pretty much got to be a reason. There's got to be a decent story where there's sort of a tangible,
tangible benefit. Yeah, they're
right.
They're using it to. They're a coach, and they're claiming a finish or a time to further their practice or get their their influencers, Johnny Manziel's wife, ex-wife.
Oh, that was a good one.
And I didn't break that one, but I went on a Leopard show talking about that one and everything else. But again, she's a social media influencer and claiming, hey, I did this without any training. Well, no, you didn't.
Right.
So,
you didn't. And I get that. I think, a lot of the fear, I think a lot of the people that have criticized you, and guys, I already hear that people like on my message board going, oh, they're going to, but I think one part of my sense is that I think a lot of the criticism comes from fear that somehow you're going to catch somebody for doing something that they didn't cheat and they did, but there's going to be a mistake. There's going to, and you're going to identify somebody who maybe didn't cheat, and you're going to write an article and it's going to come out. I've talked to a couple of people that are in my group, and one of the things that came up multiple times was just that, in terms of not in terms of procedure. I know that you have a procedure, but I think it's the fear of being outed. I think it's, all right, so you use, timing mats and timing chips. And those things aren't necessarily completely reliable, and I got to tell you, I've ran a lot of races and I have never, not hit a timing mat. I've never had, a time, and I understand that they malfunction from time to time, but I think people have a fear that they're going to get caught for doing something that they didn't do. So can you put sort of people's minds to ease in terms of what's the procedure that you go through? Obviously, cheating is a very touchy subject, and to out someone like that, you better have your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
What's the procedure that you go through once you identify somebody? Trying to reach out to them, trying to confirm. What's the procedure you go through? So that you wouldn't catch somebody that didn't cheat.
Yeah, it's definitely a high bar. So to your point, timing mats again. That's kind of all. And where I really heard the most of this criticism was like how I kind of did like my Boston, marathon, where, basically I would flag people. That's probably the wrong term, but, Boston, they assign their bib numbers based on how fast you qualified. So based on bib numbers, you can kind of predict what their approximate Boston time should be. And so if somebody who qualified, so someone with a low bib number who qualified in 2 hours and 45 minutes ran a 4.5 hour Boston Marathon, they would be prioritized to where I would look at them. And so people so I get messages all the time like, oh, I really crashed at Boston, or, I get messages people like trying to explain their times to me, where I know a whole lot more than that. So really that's just kind of prioritize the review. So again, kind of going back to what so I know there's a lot of fear with that. But I mean, there's never one thing like people missing timing mats by them. That's not going to say that may make me look at it closer, but I'm never going to say somebody cheated because they missed timing mats. And there are valid reasons why they malfunction. You say you've never missed a timing mat. You're probably wearing your bib, right on the front like you're supposed to. Some people wear the bibs behind them. That lowers the accuracy rate.
Under a sweatshirt or something, right? Yeah.
You wear it under a sweatshirt, or you have it behind you instead of in front of you, or you have a bib belt and you have fluids covering up the bib and the reader.
Right.
All that stuff affects read. So somebody who does it consistently, I'm looking back at races, they've missed timing mats in multiple races. Okay, that's really suspicious. Then you kind of look at pictures. If you either don't see pictures, that's another. Hey, I don't see any pictures. But then you find out, see they're wearing the timing mat behind, their bib behind them. So it's, so that could be misread. So if I'm looking at, so say first I see somebody, they've missed timing mats. Okay, what am I looking at next? Okay, did their pace? Did they get faster over the period of time where they're missing data? And that's really kind of a key. I'm looking for really at least 2 solid points of data. Okay. This person they started out running 10-minute miles. They ran 6-minute miles for the 10K where they have no data. Okay. That's very suspicious. Let me look at other races. Are they capable of running? Do they just start out slow? Do they consistently run documented 6-minute miles? Okay. They do. Okay. Something weird may have happened here. I may be suspicious, but it's not, but I have enough information where it's like, okay, I'm just kind of, put them to the side, but I can't prove it. So, I'm looking at photos. Okay. Are there any photos of them, on this portion of the course? So I'm looking for a lot. I'm never going to call.
So it's not just like one piece of data or, it's always, there's always seems to be like, and I got to be honest, I read your articles, and I think you do a pretty thorough job. I do think you do a pretty thorough job. And I think the next step from that, once you kind of identify a sort of a target, I guess, of someone who potentially could cheat, the next, I would think that the next step is, and from what I understand, from what I read of your articles, it seems like then you actually do give the person a chance to either explain. And I got to tell you, there's, you talk about some of your data points. I've done an Ironman and then a month later ran a marathon, but I was running with friends and I ran like a 7-hour marathon, which if you wanted to flag that seems like exactly the kind of thing that you'd say, hey, this guy ran a 7-hour marathon, but before he ran a 4-hour marathon, which I never did, but say I ran like a 5-hour marathon. It sounds like something that could get flagged. And I've had other things happen to me where like my Garmin said that I finished the race in over 2 hours and the official time was 1:48 and a half marathon. And I'm thinking, oh my God, like if Marathon Investigator guy looks at this, he's going to write an article about me and I don't even have a chance to explain. But I think you typically give someone, I mean, everyone has like, how do you go about, because it's such a touchy subject. So you've identified someone, you have the data. How do you approach people? Because it seems like, man, if you came to me with data on a race that I knew I didn't cheat and you're accusing me, it's almost like, I feel like they would feel guilty until proven innocent. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that's, yeah. And that's the point. So I got to, try to be as diplomatic or as careful as I can. And usually, not always. Usually when I get to the point when I'm approaching somebody, I'm pretty sure something happened. I've gone through everything. I'm like, okay, something's off, but and
you do approach people before you write it. You wouldn't just write an article.
If I'm writing about somebody individually,
you try to get it
when possible. I check. Some people are, you can't find it. I don't have any way to contact them.
Johnny Manziel's not going to give you a call.
Bree, TSE, whatever. Yeah, no, exactly. So there's, some of that, but like, I'll always, reach out to them. And there's so many different cases. Like one example, there was the blog I wrote about Latoya Snell, that I didn't even write about it, but she was being, she's a back of the packer. Not something I would typically write about, but again, she's a very,
social media.
She's social media. She's known. She's sponsored by Hoka and all that. So she's definitely named. So on her page, and one of her fan supporters, somebody who followed her, pointed out, hey, people are there's she's not showing any results, but she's saying she finished the race. What happened? So it's like, okay, let me figure it out. She's saying she did the whole race. There's chatter that she didn't. So I messaged her, say, hey, what? Hey, does someone know what happened at the race? Where I was looking to, okay, I'm either going to clear her and confirm that, hey, she got diverted or the timing mats were pulled up or something, caused that, but then, after a couple messages, she just completely blasted me for accusing her of cheating, which I didn't do.
Right. And you didn't even write about her. You wrote to her and she took it public.
Yeah. And I could have just as easily wrote to her, hey, yeah, I agree with you. Hey, if I post on someone's page, say, hey, no, this was legitimate. And I've done that kind of thing before, that would have, served to help her. So I wasn't out to get her.
Yeah.
Now I did know, I saw her Strava and I knew she turned around early.
Yeah.
But I didn't know why she turned around early. You get that late. It's a rock and roll marathon. They're known to turn people around, early and let them cross the finish line.
Derek, so, I'm going to say you don't have to explain to me on this one. I read this one pretty detailed, and for someone who's run a number of marathons, when you miss 3 miles from the course. Yeah, right. Right. And honestly, I thought that some of the responses from that article were just disgusting. I thought they were terrible and classless. But some of my listeners, some of my readers, they said, they kind of felt the opposite. They felt like she had a right to be defensive as soon as you sent her a message. And I'm like, I don't know. To me, I don't think so. You were asking a question. You were trying to get an answer. And I gotta think that if she's run so many marathons, she knew she missed 3 miles. And to her defense, she does have other cases where she pulled out or DNF'd and she has written about it and talked about it. So I don't understand why she got defensive and just didn't come clean.
Yeah, I think she had to know. And then, she was, talking about, rock and roll apologized to her and all that. Well, I didn't see any of that publicly. So yeah, that was just a weird case of, I guess. And then, even after first she kind of, I said, hey, sorry if I came across too blunt, and I was going on with other stuff with the site then too, and my site was shut down because somebody complained about a photo. That was all the same day, so I'm like, okay, maybe I was a little more direct, but at that point, I knew, I knew she got turned around, but she was still at that point saying she did the full thing that evening. But then she goes, okay, I accept your apology, and we were good until she got word from Rock and Roll that, hey, you didn't run the whole thing, and then all of a sudden she went back to making hers public, and I was getting blasted when I hadn't done anything. I hadn't written anything publicly, and I'm getting messages on my page saying I relentlessly attacked her. I'm like, why are you attacking? Why? I'm like, and I even said another one where I don't think I had to, where I said, hey, And here's a case that she eventually posted my apology on her page.
And here's a case that she didn't really cheat, right? I mean, it wasn't like she cheated.
I don't think she did anything. My kind of statement, I don't think she did anything wrong on race day.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's how she represented it. I think it was all, after the fact, hey, I did the whole thing. And it was all, I'm like, hey, she, I'm sure they likely, she wasn't alone. I'm sure they likely turned her around because she was past, the course closure part.
There's certainly a chance that she didn't know that was, that she was, if you're not familiar with the course, there's a chance they were turning her around early and she didn't know that she hadn't made the end of the turnaround. But when you look at your watch and you look at your, your data, that if you miss 3 miles, you miss 3 miles.
Oh yeah. Every damn mile you're like, man, I got 5 miles to go. There's no way to make it. Sometimes you might lose a mile. I forget. Hey, I've done that too, when I've been struggling like, oh, my mile 18, shoot, I thought I was at mile 19, but you're not with 3 miles, like, hey, I'm done.
And I think I read that story, and I read kind of the back and forth and the play by play, and I feel like one, she didn't necessarily cheat. I just wish she would have just come clean, which kind of brings me to my next question, which is, out of all the people you approach with hard data saying, hey man, what happened here? It looks like, we flagged you. Can you please just, give me some background information or data? How many people say, yeah, you got me, I cut the course, or yeah, you got me? Do you get those? Because it seems like every story, obviously you write it because there's drama involved and it makes a good story. If someone just said, yeah, I cheated, there might not be a story there. So it might not, you know what I mean? It might just be like, all right, move on. You let the race directors know, maybe they disqualify them and ban them from future races or whatnot. But how many people that it seems like most people are just severely defensive to the death. They will defend their cheating to the death. But which is probably a bad word to use, but how many people do you contact that just admit it and say, hey, you got me?
Very few, at least not initially. Or they, each one was obvious. They just ignore me. Or, I'd written a story about the guy who's like the response. I was cheated. His response was, "Hey, get a life." Didn't respond, anything. Then the story was up. Then months later, he emailed me. He's like, "Hey, yeah, I admitted it. I talked to the race, and I fully, and he fully admitted it." So so like kind of after the fact, or I think now that initially people got messages to me like they didn't know who I was. Now typically they're familiar on some level.
It's like the last, right? It's like the last email they want to see in their inbox.
I mean, if they cheated, if they didn't, it should be fine. But I mean, literally, I probably less, probably half dozen or maybe more who just like immediately, came clean.
I mean, even sometimes it seems like you confront them with like this. It's like, no, here's a picture of you on a bicycle. Here's a picture of you. It's like, and they just still will not admit it.
Yeah, and and then you got the weird ones like this, and the latest like this Emily Clark that that I was.
She said she had a twin sister.
Yeah, well, and actually, I did have an actual twin sister situation that we wrote about last year, in detail, where this woman she ran, and she bib-muled for her twin sister. They don't look. I think that they're not. Or they're close, but they don't. They don't have the same.
There's a distinction
at this point. Right. So it was obvious that But boy, she was defending that, and I had she said her Facebook was hacked. I had comments about her being on town and qualifying for a sister. So, then my Facebook was hacked. Well, those are like 6-month-old posts at this point. It just made her Facebook and it was like on 2 different platforms. So it was obvious, but it's not that. People, I get the doctored, Garmin data.
I'm sure you're used to seeing that too. I'm sure you now.
Yeah, the woman who photoshopped was like, okay, there's no map on this. Hey, look. Within 5 minutes, I can create the same track for myself.
Didn't even bother to add up the splits to make sure they equal.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it was a very good Photoshop job, except for the times. Yeah, I added up every single split. It didn't add up. So that was Amanda who was at a triathlon.
And then she cheated again. Oh, that's right, the triathlon one. She only did one loop of the run or something.
Yeah, but she cheated some of the bike too, and that's what actually she sent me a photo saying, "Oh, I proved on the bike," but then
Right.
but that actually made her bike split faster than I thought, which would have she would have the fastest bike split of the whole field.
Yeah.
So her whole story kind of fell apart where she said she had to take some medication, was worried about being labeled a doper, and so it was just a whole weird
There's just
story.
excuse after excuse kind of thing.
Yeah, but I knew she had cheated at the bike before all that happened, and so that's where it kind of went off the rails. And she's the one. To follow up on her, she's facing charges for cyber stalking and and acute. And that's the whole thing. So there's always a lot of times there's more to it, than
and I got to tell you,
if they're going to cheat a triathlon or a marathon, they could be doing some other stuff,
Right, and she's like also, I think she's a coach, and she's but I do have to say, like, I think as a coach, because I coach some athletes, and I think that, they could, in a way, be a little bit mutually as far as the coaching is concerned. The social media and online thing, yes, I understand. If you're out there and you're trying to, push yourself as you're trying to get market share. I mean, you're doing it. I'm doing it. We're all trying to kind of get that market share, have people listen to us or read our articles or read our blogs. So yeah, that bothers me when someone is saying they did something they didn't do. But as a coach, I almost feel like, you can be an effective coach. And because she did have like sort of people saying like, hey, this woman actually, she helped me as my coach. Oh, yeah. So it's not, it could be a little mutual exclusive there. It doesn't necessarily, so you could be a cheater and a good coach is what I'm saying. It's a little,
at some level, yeah.
Maybe at a base level there. But let me ask you this: when you started getting into this, you started doing the blogs. I mean, obviously, I think that it's an entertaining read. It's entertaining to read. I get stuck on your website all the time, reading like story after story. I could sit there all day and read these stories. I don't know why, they just grab me and I read them. And I'm wondering, to what extent though did you expect sort of like the backlash that you get and the vitriol that some people come at you with. When you started this, was it just like, oh, this is gonna be fun, like we're gonna catch cheaters, we're gonna be doing a good deed? Did you ever expect that it would come back and like and people would be like harshly criticizing you?
Yeah, again, I never expected this to be so public. I never expected to have stories about me be on CNN or Inside Edition or or that kind of stuff. So I always knew there would be criticism, but I was, to the large, to be largely public and to have that, to have criticism, levied on, on my local newspaper or or whatever. Yeah, I didn't expect that, but yeah. Like initially, again, there were some people just, when it first came out, hey, look at Boston, you get the whole, hey, why don't you let race directors do their job? Everyone runs for themselves. They're only cheating themselves. And you get a lot of that. And I think I've shown that, I don't write about the people who are just cheating themselves. There's more to that. But there's some people who are just, and I understand. Yeah, I understand people I write about. I've written about some bloggers who, pushed back, but then it's gotten, and I'm fine if you want to talk about the Frank Meza thing at some point. We don't need to skirt it.
No, we don't. And I don't even actually really, I don't want to talk about his issue in particular. If we're going to talk about it, let's put off to the back first for a minute. Let's put off to the back for a minute.
It kind of goes towards some of the criticism. So when that was coming up, I had people jumping, Kelly Roberts, who's a blogger, pulled out old conversations completely out of context. Yeah. And, to criticize me, where it's basically, where I had, I basically reached out to her and, say, hey, somebody left comments on the story I wrote about her. They weren't appropriate. Hey, I apologize for it. I said, I made a comment. I don't think it was ill intent. She went off on me on that. I'm like, well, the comments I saw, I didn't think there was ill intent. Let me look and see if there was something I missed. I emailed her back, say, oh, yep, I missed something. It was completely inappropriate. I deleted them and, and removed the user. And, she took a clip of that, conversation 2 years later and posted it, the day after the whole Frank thing. So so it's the people who are, I'm fine with like legitimate criticism, but the people who are just like, hey, here's where I can get you. Right. Let me bring something up that's completely unrelated and let me spin it my way. And, so it's, so that's what, gets me. And, the trolls are the trolls, people are just, regardless. And people who have, again, and there's some people who I respect who have, who've been harshly critical of me every step of the way. But hey, look, that's your opinion. I can respect that. My Scotty Coomer, who's my, podcast host, he started, he was ripped on me on his page, said, hey, don't go to this website, don't give him the clicks and all that stuff. So I confronted him on online, and went on his podcast. We talked for 2 hours. Now I consider him a friend. So it's
hey, there you go.
I like genuine criticism, and I like having that debate. But just the people who you can't reason, and I learned stuff from that too. So things changed, and I've edged one way or another over the years. So I can, it's the people like Latoya and stuff. If everyone just disagrees with you, not even being mean spirited, you just block them and delete them, and you end up having a cult. And you're not going to, you kind of lose touch with what the real perception is, and what you're doing. If you only listen to the people who agree with you, it's
no. And I think I think in reading your blogs, like I feel, and I don't want to, I don't want to speak for my listeners, because I don't know, and I don't know to the degree that they have read your stuff, because I feel like you do give everyone a fair shake to explain, or to and I think I do think that there's a fear that, hey, what if he catches me? Or I was talking to one of my listeners who said, I'm running a marathon one day, and there's a woman in front of me, or two women in front of me, and they're going slow, and I pass her, and then 2 miles later, there's no way she didn't pass me. She was the kind of person that I would have noticed, and she didn't pass me, and the next thing I know, I pass her again. And I'm like, I've done that before too. I've seen that before. Meaning the person obviously cut the course, and it's like, man, it's like, is that someone you're going to catch? And probably not, because we're back at the Packers, and as long as they don't go over a time matter or anything like that, or they're not hurting anybody else really, and to a certain degree they are, because I've had to pass that person twice, right? So it's just another increased traffic. And I know that's. But still, it's kind of like that's a minor detail.
Yeah, that's minor, but it's like, I can't say anybody who claims a finish who didn't really finish is kind of degrading the value of the marathon finish. So yes, in a way, so I'll more write about them kind of as a whole. Like, hey, I found I found 250 people cheated at this race. A lot of them were back in the pack. They may not have been intention, but but whatever. So, but I'm not going to call out. I mean, God, I could write 20 articles a day if I was going to, which would be great for traffic. But all about clicks and traffic, I could just do that all day. And people would probably still visit. So
I'm going to give you. So I don't want to talk about the Frank situation in particular, because I honestly feel like it's a really sad story. I feel like it's a really sad story, and I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's sort of like just I don't know. It's sort of I don't want to talk about it specifically. Obviously, there's no. I don't know. What I want to take it from more of a general standpoint. And this is what I'm going to say. And this is the one comment that I got that I said to myself, you know what? Here's a bit of a criticism, but not necessarily a criticism per se, as it is maybe an idea or a place where that things can be either improved or enhanced. So I want to kind of lay this out for you and tell me if you agree. Now, you approach people with typically with what I would say with hard facts, with the timing mats, whether it be pictures, people visual, people who've witnessed people cheating, and then a lot of times you find that the same people cheat over and over again, multiple races, multiple times. When faced with, and you could say that I'm talking about Frank in particular, but overall, this happens often. People are just bombarded with evidence that they've cheated, and they will defend this to the death. Now, at a certain point, it's almost they will defend themselves no matter what you say. Does it become an issue of maybe there's something like mentally going on here? We're entering a point where someone is not really all with it, and I hate to do this because I don't want to put you on the spot too much on the show, but I kind of promised my listeners I would ask you a pertinent question. I think this is, but by prodding the situation and poking and continuing to ask questions, which may be valid, that you're only sort of building the fire within someone who is not mentally stable to begin with. Is that something you ever think of? Is it a valid criticism? Because I got to tell you, though, it's the one thing when someone talked to me about you that I thought, maybe if there's a place he could do better at, it's saying, hey, you know what? This person, it's not even that they're being a jerk or they're being an idiot. They're just not with it?
Yeah, and there's times where I've approached somebody. I'm like, okay, this I don't think I should go further with this person. There was one actually it was kind of featured on the Today Show a few years back where they had me look at Philadelphia marathons, find people who cheated, and do that. And there's a woman one that I had known about before Philadelphia, and she popped up there again. Who her husband was wearing her chip. She would have her bib on, but her husband would have her chip. I talked to her. I'm like, man, this would really affect her. I said, I can't go public with her, with her name, or I can't, give anything up. So, there's cases where I'm recognize that, from talking to somebody. With the case, with Frank. There's a whole lot more to that, and I think people kind of get what they read from some headlines and that.
Yeah.
Frank,
and again, I don't even want to approach it as like Frank's case. I want to approach it as like a general. You know what I mean? Because I got to tell you,
I mean, that's a good example as far as. Again, he was. The emails like to him, it was with the one specific. But there was a Let's Run thread that I'm sure he was aware of before that, going on months. So it wasn't when I emailed him, it wasn't new information to him. So I just asked specifically. I had some photos that seemed to show him, on the course, and I said, hey, is this, hey, is this you in the photos, and can you have an explanation for this? I hadn't really made a determination at that point. I was highly suspicious I was aware of him for years. And so my communication was with that. I'm like, okay. He said, yeah, it's me. I stepped off course for a few seconds. Okay. I said a little more information. I emailed him, I said, hey, here's what my conclusion is. If you have anything to change my mind, let me know. He asked that I cease communication with him, and I did. Then in that case, but then there was constant. This had gotten picked up once.
Mainstream media picked it up.
It got mainstream media.
And I'm with you, man.
And he was coming public on there saying, so it wasn't me badging him, but I kind of felt, and as I said, I would do things a little bit differently. Again, I was basically saying, hey, this is false. This is bogus. I was being questioned as far as my data and my conclusions. In the LA Times and in local in LA, on bigger platforms than myself. So I kind of felt the need, so that's kind of why I kept on going, where I would go back and like, okay, well, let me address these. Since he's not talking to me directly through this, let me address that. So I think it kind of led to, I think all the information was pertinent that I wrote about. Had the opportunity again, I may have just kind of sat and let it play out a little more and before doing maybe one larger, summary. I mean, if I had all the same information in 2 articles versus the 7 or however many were written, the perception. Might have been. So that was just a criticism. Hey, why'd you write so many about them? And it was, and I went piece by piece. Everything came out. So
And your article.
I do get your point. If I'm, and I don't typically. Usually, it's one message. I'm not going to badger somebody with all the evidence. Yeah. And if I have it, they know. If I address them, they know they cheated. Even sometimes it won't even like, hey, I've, got this, sometimes I won't, in this case, maybe it's a tactic of sort. I mean, I'm not going to, they may deny it. They may deny it at first, like, well, hey, I have this, and then it's, once they see I have it, then, okay, maybe they'll admit it. Or sometimes it's more of, they'll get an excuse to kind of surround that, or they admit to what they know I know, kind of thing. So it's probably kind of develop a little bit of an interrogation technique. You don't give all your information on the first message, but if I message somebody and then they block me right away without answering, that's a pretty good indicator.
Yeah, yeah. I think and I think you're after the fact when you wrote about the mainstream media and kind of like the way they and then they kind of, I think you did, was it the New York Post wrote an article sort of negative against you afterwards? Was it that?
Yeah, well, the article itself wasn't terrible. It was just they were going to do a general, or they pitched the story to me as being, hey, this is going to be a general story about the New York Marathon, how people cheat. Okay. And then we had that conversation. They called back like a week later and said, I have a couple more questions. Okay. And they want to talk about Frank. I'm like, all right, if you're doing the story, okay. And for a couple blurbs. So I talked about it. And then, the headline was, marathon, that I said I would do it again. And that just, I didn't say those words. The connotation of that is like, hey, I have no regret, no remorse. I went through, again, not as much. Frank's family went through a lot, but I mean, it was very difficult and still is, for me to kind of,
and I think to a certain degree, that's like the way that unfolded, and it's so unfortunate. I think the way it unfolded, because I think like, I think here you are doing your job, and you're, you obviously found a case that was open and shut, and you're being challenged on it. And then the mainstream media picks it up. And now naturally, as as a blogger, as a media person, you're excited. Here you are. You're kind of going mainstream. You're on Dan Le Batard. You're on, I think things are, your project is doing well. And then to have what happened, it's like, it's just it's severely unfortunate for all involved. That's probably even, I'm making too light of it, but so it's like, it's not like you could have projected that to happen. It's kind of like a confluence of circumstances that all went wrong at the end.
Yeah, and to that point, again, and a lot of people want to make an easy cause and effect. Well, hey, I wrote about this guy. Right. Here's what happened. Like, there's so much more to that. I even try to point out, it's, again, and even defending myself, and it looks like, hey, no, I'm trying to shift blame or trying to do this, but it's, again, in my head, it was basically like, okay, hey, wasn't, I don't think he was being harassed or, being cyberbullied now, towards the end with media, instead of knocking on his door kind of thing, that kind of stuff. But I think as far as like the online trolls that, originated from Marathon Investigation or Let's Run, again, I think that was a small piece of it. Again, I think it was just, it got to the point and maybe, we had bike photos, where it got to the point where where I think he couldn't defend himself in his circle, in the group that he was with. Right, and I think that was more than,
I think also, and once it blows up and it goes really mainstream and it's all over the place, and it's just, that's got to be, for someone who I think obviously is trying to defend a situation that he doesn't have the evidence to defend. It's, it goes back to that whole, is there some kind of like mental instability there? So, you mentioned that maybe you could have written 2 blogs instead of 7. Is there anything, and like I said, I think the only thing, that was the only criticism I think that I received of you, that not that I didn't defend, but that I paused and I thought to myself, maybe there's like there's something here that needs to be addressed or needs to be explained or did you change any of your, say, approach or policy, to sort of, to be a little more sensitive around identifying perhaps somebody who might not be as stable or, anything like that? Have you changed anything, or have you done anything differently? Or, I mean, obviously, you said you might have written a less number of blogs, or a less, is that something that you, I want to try to satisfy my listeners and perhaps people who are critical of you, and your approach. I want to give you kind of sort of opportunity to because that's the only, honestly, like Derek, that's the only thing that I heard from my readers. I thought to myself, hey, maybe there is something there. I don't know. I try to put myself in your shoes.
Yeah, it's
got to be tough.
Again, and this was kind of the point that I was intending to make, with the New York Post, was with Frank in particular. I don't, again, his response to me didn't indicate like, again, it was just denial. It was typical denial of the same kind of denials I get hundreds of times. So there was nothing there that struck me as, okay, this guy, I mean, again, anybody that's cheating at that and to that level, there's something there, there's a motivation, there's something wrong, but
right.
You can't push that towards, whatever depression or whatever else,
Right. Again, I'm not trying to, right. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to push blame on you. I'm not saying it's your responsibility to find this out.
No.
I'm just wondering if there's something we could do to be more sensitive towards it.
Yeah. So, kind of the point was, okay, with, that again was to that level with the world records and, over that many years. And he was fairly public. I don't know if I'm stuck with a similar case, similar circumstances to that level at that time in some, it's public. I don't know that the story itself, that I would write the story much differently. Yeah. Again, if I'm writing I think my quote was basically, if I'm writing a blog about marathon cheating and I have somebody who cheated claiming world records over a 5-year period, I'm going to write about that person. I don't see, how that can change. Now, as far as changes, again, trying not to, not, Milken, there was an articles I did on like JD Greening. It was like over 3 days, I probably did 6 articles. Stuff just kept on happening, and I was like just jumping to write about it. Okay, in that case, as I know something, more developments are coming, let me just hold back. I don't need to be, I don't need to write at every second of update. So it's kind of those, okay, let me kind of do that. Let me, again, work
And it's hard because you're probably arguing with this person too. Like you're arguing with them. They're defending themselves. You're showing their evidence. I even sense from some of the conversations I read, like it almost seems like you try not to be argumentative. You just try to be factual and to the point. But it's got to be hard to like hold back. It's not.
And what you see, and I'm
because you're defending your work.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, can I just sit back? And if you don't defend it, then people take that as the truth. Right. That was a criticism. Like, hey, why don't you take all the articles down after that happened? I'm like, I just can't. It was kind of from a legal standpoint, it didn't make, if there was anything to come from that, taking things down, be like, oh, he took everything down. He must have done something wrong. He must have been incorrect. And then at the same point, all these articles are linking to, everybody who would, just, that was my only defense because I didn't think it was appropriate for me to say anything. So it's that, but a lot of people just read the headlines and, like the one commenter on your site's like, hey, I'm glad you finally spoke up about this. I'm like, I spoke up about it. I kind of gave my statement and, kind of my changes and, my thoughts about it, within a month. I was pretty much to the point where I couldn't even write a thing even when, about anything, for about a month's time where I just had to, kind of get myself right. Right. So but the first thing I did before I started kind of getting back to the normal type articles was kind of addressing that. And so, so it's, kind of main things are, hey, I now try to work with the races, trying to be a little less critical of races, work cooperatively. I mean, if there would have been a way to, have a better, more open line of communication with the LA Marathon, before all this. True. And it could have been happened, maybe it wouldn't have been so, public at that point. But at the same time, if,
now, do you think
3 years ago, a lot of stuff could have been done that may have changed it, but it's nobody's individually's, like anybody's, to blame. And it's, again, trying to define cause and effect is dangerous.
Yeah, it's a sad situation. It's a sad situation all around. Yeah, it just, I think it's just, it's. I don't think it's a situation where you can point blame. Me personally, I don't think it's and I know everyone's gonna have their own opinion, but me personally, I don't think it's a situation where you can really assign blame. I think it's just a sad thing that happened. And I kind of to shift the subject here, and I'm not trying to move this to blame. But you mentioned about LA talking to LA Marathon, and it makes me wonder sometimes, like, to what degree. I mean, it seems like some of these races aren't doing anything to stop people from cheating. And to what degree do you think that, that the races are actually going after cheaters and getting rid of them, or at least trying to get rid of the BQ, the people who, cheat and get a BQ? And do you think that they were aware, or maybe they were just being blind about how much cheating actually does go on? And do you think that the work that you've done has kind of brought a lot of this to light?
Yeah, I definitely think that the work I've done has brought this to light. Because I've seen races change their policies. Boston has a link, hey, if you know a questionable result, click this to report something. So, so the stuff, I think most of the races would, like me not to be involved, and they don't want to have their race profiled in any way. A couple of races I've been very critical of in the past. Philadelphia, I was critical with them in the past. Seems like that led to them make some changes, and they kind of publicly addressed people that they removed this year, and I think they did a great job. So that's an example. I know just from looking at, I look at the Boston results every year. The first 2 years I looked at it before I was, what I did was known. When I did my prioritized list, out of the first, 100 people, maybe 15 or 20 were obvious cheaters and blatant, possibly serial cheaters over a number of years. Now I'm struggling to find, the people that cheated, that actually get in. I'm finding a lot of people beforehand and getting them out before that. So, I think it's helping on two levels. It's, the races could be doing more, so these people aren't able to get in. And then, the people don't want to be profiled on my blog. So the people that are aware of it, and, again, like I find a lot of the blatant, wow, this guy obviously, hey, he ran a 2.5 hour qualifying time and he's a 6 hour marathoner. I'm not seeing as much of that as I did initially. It was so easy to find those, and I'd find them within 10 minutes. Now and a
lot of that's because the races are finding it, right?
Better. Yeah. It's a combination of both. I think some people aren't trying, and then I think the races are finding more. But that said, there's still plenty to find, and hey, maybe they're getting smarter. My blind spot is, the races that don't have any timing mats. They have no timing mats, no photographers. I can say all I want that, hey, this guy who ran a 3-hour marathon, ours runs 4.5 hours, cheated, but I can't prove it. I'm like, there's no, I know, I know in my heart of hearts that this person couldn't run that time, but I don't have anything to prove it. So some of these smaller marathons, and those are kind of the blind spots. So
I tell you,
but as this comes up and people still question, okay, yeah, maybe we need to put a camera at the turnaround next time, or maybe invest in a timing mat. So, and a lot of races, like Fort Worth, I just wrote about it. Yeah, we should have had a split. We should have had a mat there. We're going to put one next year. So, I races approaching me all the time to say, hey, what do you think about this? How would you handle this one? So I see a lot of cases where, something does come to light, like, yeah, we'll put in some safeguards next year. So I think a lot of that is happening.
And I got to tell you, I do like that. I like the fact that they're coming around. I mean, I got to tell you, for the people that sometimes think about the people who are critical of this, I think of like our culture and what where we've come in the last, 10 years. When you think of like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and A-Rod and Lance Armstrong and all these people, major athletes who have been caught cheating. And in the NFL, it's like every year there's like 36 people who get nabbed and have a 4-week suspension.
Yeah, no one cares.
And no one cares. And I think that, and especially with races and big races and when I see, and people in our group, we see the way it affects people. We see people who literally train, or literally, that's a bad word, but who realistically train hard and work hard. And then they don't make the cutoff by a couple of minutes, and someone who didn't deserve it gets in. And I think it's right to go after those people, and I think it's right to try to get them out of the results and get people who really earned it in there. It's only fair, and that kind of stuff has always bothered me. So in that way, I respect your work, and I think you've done a great job. I do kind of want to end sort of on that note, because I think you do a great job, and I think you actually have a very good temperament for this, the way you approach people, and you approach them with facts, and you give them an opportunity to explain. I think you do a good job, and I think it's good to see that, we're seeing the extra timing mats and we're seeing the results. And I got to tell you, I was doing Ironman Lake Placid, and it's about 11 o'clock at night, and I'm out on it's dark out, so I can't see, and I couldn't see the time on my watch. And I pushed, when I went to push a button so that the light would come on, and I pushed the lap button, which registers 1 mile for me, right? So it basically says, oh, you must hit a mile. So so when I pushed the button, it registered my mile as like 4 minutes and 30 seconds, which in mile 24 of an Ironman, there's no, in mile 1 of mile 1 of a 1 mile race I'm never running. And my first thought that came to mind was, ooh, if I ever have to supply this data to Marathon Investigator guy, he's going to ask me about this mile.
Actually, I think you'd be fine, because you throw it on the Strava, it would speak correctly. It's just yours. Yeah, it'd be. Well, it's fun. I did the flying pig 2 years ago, and again, I was very slow. It's like the first marathon I did in a number of years. It was over 6 hours, but so and I didn't have a good Garmin at that point, and it died on me. So, and it didn't save anything. So then I took photos. I was in photos at the finish line, nowhere else. Because I was so far back, they just kind of bailed on me. So I'm like, I can't prove I ran this if anyone would question my 6.5 hour time. I had the same excuse that people gave to me. Hey, my GPS died. I'm like, yeah, you're lying. That's always the excuse of a cheater, and that was mine. You
got to investigate the investigator.
Yeah, so it's like, so stuff does happen. But I was doing 24-hour race, and it's the same kind of thing. I was just so tired, and it's like I knew I had to charge. It wouldn't, GPS now I have it goes about 20 hours, so I was like about 18 hours in. Like, oh, let me charge this while I'm taking a little break, and I couldn't get it connected, and so I just stopped it. So so there's no proof that I did the last 4 hours of that thing.
Right.
I could have just been going back and forth across the timing mat for all. There are enough people there that I know, that saw me, but yeah. And,
well, it's funny because
I got second in my age group. There were 4 of us, but I got second. So, So.
Sure you did. Oh man. But it's kind of interesting when you hear things like that. But, listen, I appreciate all your time. I appreciate you coming on the show. And, I tried not to give you a total free pass. I mean, we talked about some difficult things.
No, absolutely. Again, I'm always happy to, and I don't give to the people who criticize and debate. They have a good debate. I welcome that. And, I learn things from that sometimes, and hopefully can Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope you keep doing.
Think about it a little bit more. So yeah.
Yeah, and I hope you keep doing what you're doing. I think I think net, I think you're making a positive effect on the sport, and I think we have to keep the honor in the sport. It's one of the things I think it's actually one of the things that separates us sometimes from from the professional sports, and when you see football players and baseball players that cheat all the time and they don't get caught, and then the purity of the sport matters. It should matter. And especially when you talk about doing things and getting sort of accolades that other people have earned, which I like that you focus on those kinds of cases. I don't know. I like your work. I just hope you keep doing what you're doing.
Appreciate it.
All right. With that, we're going to call it. Before I let you go, Derek, where can we find you? It's marathoninvestigation.com.
Yes.
And then I know you're on Twitter as well. It's kind of like a weird.
Give that name. Yeah, they need to give me a couple more characters. Yeah, so just search Derek Murphy, Derek. I'll pop up. It's Marathon Investigator. Get rid of a few vowels in there. I need to change it.
Trust me, I'm Ord Marathoner.
Yeah. So and you also really the more active is the Facebook page and the Facebook group. So to search Marathon Investigation, and you'll get it. There's the page in the group, and that's how most people find out. I share the articles there. So when I publish something, I share it there, and people. That's where most of the traffic comes from. So Facebook I'm most active. I do share on Twitter as well.
Perfect. All right. We'll call it quits there. Thanks again, Derek, for coming on the show. And I think we're going to have this one out on early next week. So sort of like December, I don't know, 9, 10, somewhere around there. And remember, every day is an ordinary day unless you make it extraordinary. So get after it, guys.